Well, we know the starting pitching matchups for at least the first two games of the World Series, and we can kind of guess what the rest will look like for the Dodgers at least. We're going to dig into that, plus injury news, and who do we think will be the Tommy Edman of the World Series? Let's get live on Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Dodger fans, this is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks to our everydayers for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning, and thanks to those of you who are with us live here on Tuesday evening. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers, and please subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now. If this is your first time with us, my name is Jeff Snyder. That guy next to me is my co-host, Vince Samperio. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans, just like a lot of you. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room, so we bring you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started, and visit Locked On Dodgers to get started here. Vince, we thought we might do an episode tonight speculating on what the starting rotation would be, but then turns out the Dodgers named at least the first two starters, which makes sense because Jack Flaherty has to meet with the media soon as the game one starter. And so
hold on. We got breaking news.
We have breaking news.
Fernando just passed.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh man, this changes this episode for sure.
Yeah.
All right, we are going to. That's a big hit. Okay, we're going to talk about the starting rotation later. We're going to talk about Fernando Valenzuela. We feared this was coming. We had heard rumblings that the Dodgers just announced it 1 minute ago. Like literally while I was saying that introduction, the Dodgers announced it on social media. I wouldn't be surprised if we find out that he passed away, a few days ago. Fernando is a Dodger legend for so many reasons. Obviously, on the field was huge. Off the field was maybe huger. And Vince, I'm sure that you can speak to this a little bit better than I can, just because, you being from LA and being from a Mexican family. Those are two things that I'm not. I'm from Southern California, but not LA specifically. And I am not from a Mexican family. And there was, it's hard to imagine now, but there was a time when the Mexican and Mexican-American community in Los Angeles did not embrace the Dodgers, because of the circumstances of how they built Dodger Stadium, all that stuff. That is a big, long conversation. But Fernando was kind of the bridge to that community that made it what it is now. The fact that the Mexican community in Los Angeles loves the Dodgers now, and Fernando is what started that.
Yeah, it's obviously we knew he was sick. We had heard he was in the hospital. Different reports. I'm sure we might get more details. We might not, but yeah, a huge loss in the Dodger world, and kind of been a rough last few years as Dodger fans now with Tommy and Vin Scully and now Fernando and Fernando specifically. Like, it's one of those things where if he wasn't there in 81, would the Dodgers have even won that World Series? Which I guess it's a little bit fitting that the Dodgers are playing the Yankees, and that 81 rookie season when the Dodgers went to the World Series was against the Yankees. But also, would this fan base be where it's at? You can't say for sure that the fan base the Dodgers have that is, either Mexican specific, Latino, everything else would be there without Fernando, because who knows if they don't catch on in the 80s, not that long after Dodger Stadium and the Dodgers and everyone was there. Do they ever catch on? Do they, stick with basketball? Do they stick with other sports? Do they, maybe nothing happens and maybe the Angels captivate that type of fan base? You don't know. And And obviously on the field for the Dodgers, he was very good for, not as long a period as some may think when you think about Fernando. But the reason Fernando is so revered is just because of bridging that community, bringing those communities together, giving the Dodgers, the reason for the best fans, the most attended games, leading in attendance last few years, all that type of stuff, all kind of starts there. You would, from what you hear and what I've heard and from people I've talked to, and it was a time where, you even still, you look at him when he pitched and you're like, that guy was that dominant, and you could tell why there was so many people that looked toward him and said, oh man, maybe I like baseball. That's the other part, is like, maybe not even just Dodger fans of baseball, but baseball fans in general in Los Angeles might have not happened. Like, you might have had more soccer, more whatever, and you might have not had, the great community we have, Dodger fans we have now.
Yeah, for sure. And it's, he was huge for the Mexican community, but it wasn't just that. It's kind of like there is something for every Dodger fan to love about Fernando because of on the field, that for me as a chubby pitcher, like, hey, look, chubby guys can play baseball too. And, just the youth coming up as a, 20-year-old and doing what he did and just being so innocent, and just, he didn't speak any English, hardly any English at all. And, had to rely on translators who, sometimes Tommy Lasorda was his translator. And you got to put that in air quotes because Tommy was just giving the answers he wanted Fernando to give, but for him to be embraced by the entire community, it really says something. And we do wonder, I kind of wondered when the Dodgers made the decision to retire Fernando's number earlier this year. I wondered if they maybe knew something about his health that we didn't know, because, it was just a hunch at that point. But Fernando, we got a question. I can't remember who it was that asked, but I think it was one of our insiders asked me probably 3 or 4 months ago. Fernando looks really thin. Is he sick or is he just, getting in shape? And it was kind of that thing you didn't really know. Some people, you look at CC Sabathia, he was a better baseball player at a much higher weight. And since he retired, he's lost weight because, he doesn't need the extra weight to pitch with anymore, and Fernando, even, we don't know how long he's been sick for. We don't know what he was sick with. We can assume he was sick because he just died in his early 60s. But we don't know what it was, but, he did probably, he probably was in better shape, after his playing career than he was for a lot of during his playing career. And so I kind of hope that was it. But the combination of him losing weight and them choosing to retire his number, I'm glad they were able to do it before he passed away, that he could get that honor. I wish they hadn't waited as long as they did, but, better late than never, and better late than too late. And that was, this is heartbreaking. Like, the celebrity deaths don't often hit me super hard. But this one, I mean, Fernando, I was 3 years old when Fernando debuted. Like, he was my childhood. He was a huge part of that childhood. And this is rough.
Yeah. Especially kind of finding out the way we had to find out. And I guess the good thing, in terms of finding out, is we found out from the Dodgers for the most part each time something's happened recently. So, at the very least that, whatever it is or whatever the process is, the Dodgers can kind of handle it. It still has come. I remember, Vin Scully kind of came out of nowhere and, they just drop a tweet and then you're like, oh, now you got to react to it. So it's a little bit tougher, especially, knowing Fernando is sick, but not really having any updates. You don't really, you don't know exactly. And it's tough. It's one of those where there's not too many Dodger lifers out there. And you can say Fernando is a Dodger lifer. As soon as he, came into the Dodger organization, he stayed with, he went obviously to other teams during his playing career, but ended up back with the Dodgers and stuck with the Dodgers and, in the broadcast booth and everything else and always around. And yeah, I think it was the unofficial retiring of his number, I think, was a fun quirk for the Dodgers for a while. But like you said, I am glad, whether it was, some type of knowledge or just in, they thought it was time, him getting to be there for that thing, really, really makes it good. The unofficial part was fun for a while, but, getting to him to be there, his family to be there, everyone to be there, and not having it happen after the fact is, something we can take with us and everybody who was kind of there and was there in person or just watching and everything else. It was, it was, at the very least, that's how it is right now.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to come back in a minute. I'm sure there will be more Fernando talk in this episode. We'll also talk about the actual news of the 2024 Dodgers that we got today, maybe in the context of all this. We'll see how this goes. We're playing this episode by ear, but we hope you will come back in a second and play it by ear with us and keep it locked on Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's right. I said place, not win. You don't have to win. You just place a $5 bet. You get $200 in bonus bets. And I was looking at some of the World Series odds on FanDuel. There's some pretty fun things you could place your $5 bet on. Like, for example, if any pitcher records an immaculate inning anytime in the World Series, that is currently plus 10,000 odds. That means if you put your $5 bet on that, you would win $500. If you place a $5 bet and you put your $200 in bonus bets on that, then it's real money. There's a few different plus 10,000. Any pitcher to record 36 plus strikeouts in the World Series to break the all-time World Series record. That one seems less likely. I like the immaculate inning one because that can happen any time. It's not something that it doesn't take a long time. It's one inning. It could happen. I wouldn't mind putting my $5 on that or even some of the bonus money, but whatever you want to do, just place a $5 bet and you'll get $200 in bonus bets over at FanDuel.com. Hey, we are back. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Thanks for being here live with us. If you are, I know there's a Laker game going on right now that I'm sure a lot of people are watching. I watched the first hour. I was interested. You know me. I don't care about basketball, but I was interested to see LeBron and Bronny play together. I saw that, and then I said, okay, let's do a Dodgers podcast. And timing wise, I guess I'm glad we didn't do it a little bit earlier, Vince, and find out this news afterwards. But I guess I got to go through the other stuff. Become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com for your second listen. Check out Locked On MLB. In fact, Wednesday's episode of Locked On MLB will feature me with our buddy Sully talking about the World Series. I ended up talking a lot about the 1988 World Series for some reason, but Sully and I are both old men and we like reminiscing. Check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles on YouTube. And catch every pitch of every Dodger game on SiriusXM or the SXM app by searching for Dodgers. Back to the episode. Obviously, the big news that broke during my introduction to this episode is that Fernando Valenzuela has passed away. If you're just joining us, he was 63 years old. Terrible, heartbreaking news. We're gonna try to move on to the other topics that we had planned. At least, we cut out we were going to talk about in the third segment. We're going to talk about who in the World Series might play the Tommy Edman role of the unexpected hero. Maybe we'll get to that tomorrow. But instead, we bumped that one for Fernando. Now let's talk about the news from today, Vince, which is that Jack Flaherty was named the Dodgers starting pitcher for Game 1 of the World Series, with Yoshinobu Yamamoto starting the second game. That's as far as they went. It seems those two make a ton of sense because with the days off, if Yamamoto had started Game 1, he still wouldn't have been able to pitch until Game 6 because he needs the 5 days of rest. So he was going to be Game 6 either way. This way, Jack Flaherty can go Games 1 and 5, Yamamoto in Games 2 and 6. And then just looking at the math of it, knowing that they're going to have a bullpen game. If you do the bullpen game, Game 3, you're kind of locking in on 2 bullpen games and doing another one in Game 7. So it makes more sense to have Walker Buehler start Games 3 and 7 with the bullpen game in Game 4. Is that kind of your read on it too, Vince?
Yeah, there was really only one way the Dodgers could do this and have their 3 starting pitchers go 6 of the 7 games, and this is the way it had to go. If you throw Yamamoto game 1, he can't go till game 6, and if you throw Flaherty game 2, he can't go in game 5. So this is the way the Dodgers have to lay it out, and the perfect way to do it. The bullpen game, you really have to count on your starters to kind of get you through those first, at least game 2, and maybe game 3 is probably the most important with Buehler. And Buehler's a guy that can give you innings if you need. It might not be great innings, it might be a case of how they kind of get those innings across. But either way, like, this is the way it had to be. The Dodgers are in a good spot, and you're going to have Yamamoto, Buehler, or Jack Flaherty for 6 of the 7 games, and it's hard to really be too mad at that.
Yeah, and it's going to come down to how well those guys pitch. And, of course, as has been our refrain, since a month before the playoffs started, it's going to come down to the offense showing up, which the offense definitely did in the NLCS. And we do have a little bit of hope that maybe they won't have to show up quite as much because the pitching, for the most part, has been pretty good this postseason. I think maybe the most interesting part of all of this is to try to see how much of Jack Flaherty's huge clunker on Friday was due to the illness. Was it due to the Mets having just seen him a few days earlier? If so, that doesn't bode well for game 5. But, either way, I'm hoping with him being healthy and not having faced the Yankees at all with the Dodgers. I haven't looked at I don't know if he faced the Yankees when he was with the Tigers or not this year, but it's definitely been several months at least since he's faced the Yankees. So hopefully he will have the better stuff and they won't have the familiarity, and he can get them off on the right foot, because that game against Garrett Cole is going to be, it's a big one. It's a fun game. Jack Flaherty grew up, both guys, Flaherty and Cole, both grew up in Southern California, but Flaherty grew up a Dodger fan and Cole grew up a Yankee fan, and now they get to face each other in the World Series for the teams they grew up rooting for. That's a pretty cool story. I hope that the Dodgers can make it a sad story for Garrett Cole. And one of the things I'm interested, I mentioned this with Sully, so if you're going to watch Locked On MLB in the morning, you'll hear me say this too. Garrett Cole, more than a lot of pitchers, relies on players chasing out of the zone, and the Dodgers don't chase a lot, and that's going to be a big key, I think, to see if they can force him to come into the zone and then punish him when he does.
Yeah, and Garrett Cole this postseason has been a little bit different pitcher than you might think. Garrett Cole is a strikeout pitcher. He's only had 4 strikeouts in each of his starts in the postseason so far. So he has been a little bit different. That might bode well for the Dodgers. Who knows? Like, I think the one thing around starting rotations that I'm kind of seeing as more people are putting their thoughts out there, and articles are being written and everything about, and predictions are being made, is the Dodgers overworked their guys and the starting pitching wasn't good. The starting pitching, while the ERA overall is high, it's been kind of a mixed bag. Like, Jack Flaherty had one really great start, he had one okay start, and he had one really bad start. Walker Buehler had one very bad start by the numbers, one short but good start, and then Yamamoto had one bad start, one good start, both kind of short in nature. So the starting pitching is a little bit Jekyll and Hyde for the Dodgers. Hopefully a lot more Jekyll and Hyde for this one. I think that's the right way. And when it comes down to it, like, the Yankees have 4 starters and they all have had varying degrees of success, but I don't know. I think a lot of people are making it out a lot bigger than it was. Like, this is biased for sure because I'm a Dodger fan, but like, I'll take Walker Buehler over Clark Schmidt. I'll take Walker Buehler over Luis Gil right now. Yamamoto and Rodon is probably a close match. Rodon is a guy that's pitched well all season and pitched okay in the postseason. And, Garrett Cole has the ability to pitch really well and has the same ability that Jack Flaherty has to pitch not that well. And, I think it's a pretty evenly matched series in general. I don't think the starting pitching floor maybe tips in the way of the Yankees, but I definitely think the ceiling tips in the way of the Dodgers.
Yeah, it's been interesting to some of the commentary throughout this postseason. It's kind of funny, like before the Dodgers-Padres series, I was it was on MLB Network. I was listening to it on MLB Network radio, but it was one of the TV shows that Brian Kenny was the host of. And they were talking about the Dodgers and Padres matchup. And Brian Kenny just basically matter-of-factly stated, okay, so the Padres are the better team, but will that matter in a short series? And I'm like, the Dodgers had the best record in baseball, including 5 games better than the Padres. Yes, the Padres won the season series against the Dodgers, but, a season series goes across the whole season. It was just so weird to me that it was just accepted and nobody called him on it. Like Max Muncy pointed out, 80% of the experts predicted the Padres to win that series. And, it's weird how the Dodgers continue to be underdogs despite having the best record in baseball. And I don't mind it at all. It's, I kind of like that people are sleeping on the Dodgers a little bit. I think that the Padres players slept on the Dodgers pitchers a little bit. And, maybe the Mets did too. I hope the Yankees come in sleeping on the Dodgers pitchers too. And that, big game Walker Buehler shows up. Obviously, Flaherty and Yamamoto need to show up too. But those 3 guys, like you said, Vince, could be every bit the equal of the Yankees rotation. Yeah. We're going to come back in a minute, talk a little bit more about Fernando, and we will talk about some injury updates and whatnot from Dave Roberts. So thanks again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen, and please continue to keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going to go off? Which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on Prize Picks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. We are back. Thank you again for joining us here on what has turned into an impromptu memorial episode for Fernando Valenzuela. If you're just joining us, we found out about a minute and a half into this episode that Fernando Valenzuela had passed away. Obviously, our hearts are broken. Our thoughts and prayers are with his family, and the entire city of Los Angeles was his family. We are all hurting right now, even younger fans, because Fernando remained in the Dodgers broadcast booth. He has remained that link to the Spanish-speaking population of Dodger fans in the Los Angeles area for long after his playing career ended. A heartbreaking time. So I can't help thinking about the parallels, Vince. In 1978, just a few days before the World Series started, the World Series between the Dodgers and the Yankees, Jim Gilliam passed away, a former Dodger who had been remained with the Dodgers as a coach. Fernando remained with the Dodgers as a broadcaster. And Jim Gilliam and Fernando Valenzuela are the only 2 Dodgers to have their numbers retired by the Dodgers who aren't in the Hall of Fame. And because of what they meant to the team beyond their playing credentials. And so it's pretty coincidental or something that today, just a few days before the Dodgers play the Yankees in the World Series, that we learn of Fernando Valenzuela's passing. Hopefully the Dodgers can win this one for Fernando. To the extent, I don't know if people care about baseball after they die or not. I'm not that much of an expert on what happens after death to know whether baseball remains important, but to those of us still here wearing and bleeding Dodger blue, we will definitely be thinking of Fernando all postseason long. I don't know how to segue. So let's talk about injuries, Vince. Miguel Rojas is still battling his injury, but Dave Roberts said today that there has been progress and that he might be on the World Series roster. It's going to be probably a Friday decision. Basically, they're going to wait as long as they can before they have to make that decision. Roberts also said basically the same thing for both Alex Vesia and Brusdar Graterol. They will be last-minute decisions. So the World Series roster could end up looking quite a bit different than the NLCS roster did.
Quite a bit different and quite a bit stronger if those guys are healthy. Well, I would imagine they wouldn't put anybody not healthy on the roster, but you swap out those two guys for Henriquez and or Knack or Honeywell. I think Cas Parrish has earned it for sure. And the Dodgers bullpen gets deeper, and that's what you need, especially considering you do have the one bullpen game. And we saw how different the bullpen game looked just when the Dodgers didn't have Vesia last series compared to the Game 4 bullpen game, which they were able to use basically high leverage arms or mid to high leverage arms the entire way. In games 2 and 6 in the CS, they had to find ways to sneak some innings in there, and Landon Knack wasn't able to do that in game 2. Van Casparius was able to do that job in game 6, and that really went a long way, and everything else that we talked about Honeywell in game 5 and everything that kind of led into it. So yeah, for the pitching specifically, that would be such a huge boost to get back just Vesia for sure. You get back Vesia and Graterol, and even with Graterol's, he has a fresh arm at the very least. That.
Yeah, the arm will be fresh. Not sure about the shoulder, but yeah, we talked a little bit about this yesterday. How much of an upgrade it would be to replace Henriquez and whoever else with Vesia and Graterol. You then do look at, we actually could run a straight bullpen game, like you said, and not have to depend on somebody to get, can one of the rookies go 3 or 4 innings, or will our closer have to get 6 outs like Blake Trinan did in game 6? That gives them so many more options. And like I said, we talked a little bit about that yesterday, so I won't dig too much more into that. On the Rojas side, Vince, I think there's probably a decent sized contingent of Dodger fans who are maybe thinking, you know what, Miguel, take your time, be a leader from the dugout, but we're good.
There's no set playing time for him. That you can find the playing time for him, but between Pages showing off some of the power last round, between obviously Tommy Edman handling shortstop very well and hitting, and Pages being able to handle center, and even Chris Taylor contributing on offense the little bit that he did. We love you, Rojas, but yeah, your contributions can be similar to Austin Barnes in the fact of you're good on the bench right now, because it's not that the Dodgers couldn't use him, wouldn't have a use at some point for him. But, I think if you're, a Dodger fan, you're definitely remembering, the mistake that he made in the last game that he played in. So that doesn't help for sure. But I think, between Kiermaier and Rojas on the roster, I think it's more important right now to have Kiermaier for that defense late in the game. Whereas, Tommy Edman can just stay at shortstop and you're not losing much at all, or even maybe gaining defensively.
Yeah, I think Edman is probably a better defensive shortstop than Rojas, which is much more a compliment to Edman than a knock on Rojas. But especially with Rojas being hurt, he has lost a step right now, I think. And yeah, I think also when you factor in Freddie Freeman being hobbled, I don't know if you can afford to have 2 injured guys on the roster. And Freeman has a lot of value, even if he isn't in the starting lineup, to be able to deploy, the Braves just brought, or the Yankees just brought in Luke Weaver, let's pinch hit for Chris Taylor or pinch hit for whoever it is with Freddie Freeman. That's a valuable weapon to have. Miguel Rojas doesn't have that value as a pinch hitter that Freddie does. And he also plays a much more premium defensive position where it is much more of a detriment to be injured. I just have a hard time seeing him on this roster. I think that when the powers that be, which is, Dave Roberts and the front office, are looking at what's our best chance to win the World Series, that's who's going to be on the roster. I think they've proven that. I know people are still snarky. I even see it in the comments right now, the chat here, people thinking that Dave Roberts always puts his favorites on the roster. It's not just up to Dave Roberts. And I feel like they've proven that their goal is to win a World Series, and they're going to put together the roster that gives them the best chance to do that. And since we know Miguel Rojas needs surgery, how much better could he have gotten? Like, he still needs surgery. So maybe it doesn't hurt as badly right now, but he's still not healthy. And if he's not healthy, he's not good enough to help them win a World Series over the roster that we just saw score 46 runs in 6 innings or 6 games. 6 innings, that would be a record.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And, again, a compromised Rojas, which means he can't fully play defense, which is what he's there for. I think the Dodgers are fine with the same exact position players that they had last round.
Yeah. That's all we have to talk about the Dodgers roster news. Again, if you're just joining us, we started this episode, and about a minute and a half in, we got the news breaking that Fernando Valenzuela had passed away. That's, I wish we hadn't had any news to talk about. I wish we had come into this thinking, what are we going to talk about tonight? And then we could have just spent the whole half hour on Fernando. I'm positive we'll have more to say about Fernando in the coming days and the coming weeks and months and years, because Fernando has been a part of our lives, like literally both of our lives, as long as we can remember. Your entire life and my life since I was 3, Fernando has been a part of that. We grew up Dodger fans in Dodger families. And like we talked about before, you have the connection to him culturally. So much. He meant so much to so many Southern California, Los Angeles Dodger fans. It's a heartbreaking time. And, to the extent that baseball matters, go Dodgers, win it for Fernando. But mostly we love you, Fernando.
Yeah. I mean, again, a Dodger lifer, somebody that, even to this day, one of the most popular jerseys at any Dodger game you go to. Anytime they showed him on, they pretty much showed him on the big screen every night when he was in the broadcast booth, and still got the biggest cheers. When last week when they had the weekend dedicated to his getting his number retired, a packed house, everybody in their 34 jerseys. It's a sad day for sure for Los Angeles, in what is an exciting time for Los Angeles as well. And as we've unfortunately had to deal with some of this the last few years as Dodger fans, we'll continue to push through. The memories will be there. The legacy will remain there. And like I said, hopefully they win it for Fernando this year.
Yep. We're not going to end with all the stuff. You guys know how to contact us. If you don't, go watch the end of a previous episode for all our contact info. We're just going to end by saying we love you, Fernando, and we will talk to the rest of you tomorrow.